Welcome to Picture Book Chat. I'm Mary Ellen Brax, the Public Services Manager for Early Learning, and I work with children and their caregivers from birth to age 8. And with me today is Sheri. And Sheri, I will let you introduce yourself.
I am Sheri Boggs. I am the Youth Collection Development Librarian for the district. And my job is to buy all the books from 0 up through age 18. But one of my favorite things to buy is picture books. And in addition to buying them, I love sharing them with coworkers. So Picture Book Chat is something that Mel thought of as a way for us to share our love of picture books with all of our customers and viewers. And so I'll let you explain how we're going to do this, Mel.
Okay. Well, basically, too, I actually do all the programming for birth through 8. So Sheri and my jobs overlap quite a bit because we're often using everything that she's picked out in our programs. So basically, for Picture Book Chat, Sheri's going to tell us why she picked a book and what she liked about it, maybe what she didn't like about it. We haven't run into too many of those yet. And then we're going to talk about some activities that you can do with children regarding the books. So I will also say what I like or dislike about the book, and then we'll talk about what kind of extension activities we can do with children. So Sheri, which one do you want to start with today?
Well, as you know, Mel, I always like to go in kind of chronological order of like age appropriateness. So we're starting with the word book. This is Love You Head to Toe. So right away, this book strikes me with like this really high contrast cover. It's adorable. I also remember this book from 2019. We have it in a larger hardcover. So this is the board book edition of that. And sometimes a board book taken from a picture book doesn't always work. In this case, I think it does. I think it's wonderful. But anyway, these illustrations are great. They're cut paper collage, but they're very simple. They have kind of a nice three-dimensional feel. You can't really see it on the screen, but there's kind of a shadow under the shapes. And I think kids are always fascinated by, even if they can't feel the texture, like the texture that they can see, that it looks like an actual physical thing. So you've got these babies and they're in a variety of activities and they're being compared to baby animals. So the babies in this book are, you know, like an otter or like a hedgehog or like a pair of bear cubs like we've got going on here. It's got a nice rhyming text. It's really inviting. This would be perfect, I think, for toddlers, but I'm curious, Mel, to see what you think in terms of babies, which, you know, a lot of people think of, you know, the perfect book for a baby is something really durable, like a board book or like a cloth book. So I'm wondering what you thought of this one.
Yeah, I do think it is more for toddlers and preschoolers than it is really for babies. However, I think because they've got such bright colors in it, it would be attractive to babies. So, you know, there's that, you know, you're kind of running that balance back and forth. But really, for me, if I was reading it to a group of children, definitely I would go for the toddlers and possibly the preschoolers, just because I think they'd like all the animals in it too. Because there's so much you can do with the animals, animal movements, animal sounds, just, you know, habitat type of things too. I did love the collage art in this book. So there's great vocabulary in it, which is great for toddlers and preschoolers too. I love that they show diverse characters, so every child can see themselves in it. And I think the other thing you could do with kiddos is collage art. And what I love about collage art is that you can even do that with toddlers, because really it's just, you could do the very simple where you're tearing up paper and letting them glue it on. And that's just the very beginning stages of collage art, and using different texture even. You could have string for them to glue on and everything too. So I like this book. I thought it was a very sweet book. I love anything. Well, I love babies and animals myself, so it wasn't gonna be a hard sell for me. And I can really see where this would have a lot of appeal for the preschoolers too, just even in the artwork aspect of it. So yeah, I thought it was really cute. And I mean, those two little bear cubs hugging were adorable. Um, I mean, there's just so many cute, the penguin with the baby penguin, mama
Yeah.
penguin and baby penguin. So yes, I just thought this was really great. And they showed the dad and a baby too. So
Hmm.
I mean, they really did try to encompass as much as they could within the book, which I really liked.
Yeah. I was just thinking of this when I was looking through it. I really like how there are things that are recognizable to like a toddler's routine.
Yes,
There's like, learning to stand up. There's your first time in the water,
you're right.
falling and getting back up again, getting your diapers changed.
Yeah,
Um, oh, and eating. I love this
eating.
page.
Yeah. Yeah, with the dog right there. It's so true, right?
I know, and how you look like a little chipmunk.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really great for toddlers in that aspect
Mm-hmm.
too, because it's
Yes,
got, all those like little, you know, daily kind of time markers
right.
of
Mm-hmm.
what you do. So that was Love You Head to Toe. My next one, when I'm buying, I often get really excited when I see a name, and this is Michael Hall. This is an author illustrator that we've used a lot, like in our STEM bags that we have.
Story
Um,
time. We use them a lot in story time.
yeah, he's kind of, what we would call preschool gold. Like,
Yes.
his books are kind of, they're standards. They're almost, classics in the story time world. Like, there's going to be, kind of simple, bold shapes. The stories are going to be pretty concise and appealing to small children. And so this is House Mouse. And as Mel and I were talking about this earlier, I was a little underwhelmed by this when I first looked at it. And I'll get into that in a minute, but it's grown on me and I've seen a lot of things in here to
Yeah.
appreciate. So I'm excited to talk about those.
Mhm.
And that's the thing. Sometimes with picture books, like you want to give it another chance past your first
Mhm.
impression, because, for whatever reason, a book might not speak to you, but then when you look at it a second time, you can see all these things that you didn't notice before about, like how it could be really useful for
Right.
kids. So in House Mouse, you've got like these simple shapes and you've got some great prepositional phrases. One chilly morning, a mouse traveled over a hill, across a river. So you've got your great words about directions, and into a wild asparagus patch. So I liked it for that, for the vocabulary, where she found something remarkable. It was warm and welcoming. So I love how she finds a fire, but it's not named that in the book. So
Mhm.
I think right away for kids, that can be really fun, to give them that opportunity to say fire or
Yeah.
flame. Um, and so the mouse made a stove, and you've got your great action words like bang, bang, bang. Kids love sound words to mark the spot where the chilliness wasn't. And so the book goes on like that. And, on the next page, she is chased by a fox and she builds a floor to mark where the fox wasn't. And that's what I wanted to get into with this book. Like, it's really interesting how the concept of building a house has to do with what isn't in
Mhm.
the frame or in the house. Like, you always think, you hear that adage, home is where the heart is.
Yeah.
And like this book is more about the absence of something, like,
Mhm.
where the chilliness isn't, where the fox isn't.
Mhm.
And eventually some people knock and, the mouse builds a door because that's
Mhm.
where they heard the knock. Again, there's an absence there, which I think is really interesting. And so, it kind of comes around in the end where, home is where you welcome people in. But I thought that the way that it gets to that point is so interesting. Like, I haven't seen that much in a picture book where, um, kind of the negative space or the concept of something not being somewhere
Mhm.
that's defined is a big part of the story. Again, like this kind of really simple cut paper art
Yeah.
is part of the book, as with his others. But this is one, and I think this is why I was holding this against it. I think usually like Michael Hall is pretty good for toddlers. And in this
Right.
book, I was just like, this is way too abstract.
Mhm.
And maybe even it lost me the first time I was looking through it. Like, I was just kind of like,
Yeah.
but its charms really grow on me. And I can see how this
Mhm.
would be a great book to use like with older preschoolers, maybe even early elementary. But I've talked long enough. Mel, what did you think of House Mouse?
Yeah, see, and I had really liked it from the start,
Yeah.
and I wasn't thinking of it in terms of his other books. I was just thinking of it, oh, this could be really fun for preschoolers because of the process of building the house and how he builds the house. So to me, I said, okay, they could build their own houses out of materials. And what would you like your house to be? What would you like in it? And so they could go through and do that whole process of, that whole design process, I guess is what we would call it. And then what would you feed travelers that stop at your house? And, I love the message that it was a welcoming house, that everyone was welcome. So I really did like that message too. So yeah, and I didn't think of it as I liked your point about building because of what's not there.
Not there.
And which was interesting because I didn't pick up on that at first. So as I'm looking through it again, it's like, oh yeah, okay. I can see that. But they talk about the mouse was safe. So there's
Yes.
safety, which we often associate with having someplace to live, right? But safety part of it and that warmth. So it kind of covers all the basic needs too in here with food and shelter. And so I can see using it that way. But I really did, for me, the big draw was, oh, we could have the kids. It's like almost like an engineering thing. They could design their own house. So you could have them even start with the design process and the planning process and have them design it on paper and then move into, well, what materials would you use? What did the mouse use? So what could you use in your house? So that's what the appeal was to me. So
Yeah.
it is softer colors in the pictures,
Yeah.
which I think you'd have to be careful about the size group that you show it to
Yeah.
because of that. Because if you had a large group, it might not, pop for the group. Even though, I mean, there's lots of beautiful watercolor type books that we always have to be careful about reading in big groups, just because the pictures may not be able to be seen all that well from a distance. But one-on-one in smaller groups, I think this would be a fun one to use with an activity at the end.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love your idea about using it, as a way to talk about design and to do an activity where they would, design their perfect house and like what would be in it, what's on the inside, what's on the outside. And, I like the mouse character's resourcefulness in this book,
Yes.
like the way she's kind of thinking through every step of how to put the house together. And I think that's going to be really engaging. It's a great way to talk about STEM without it seeming too science-y.
Yeah,
For some
exactly.
kids.
And I mean, and you could pair it with some other books too. So if you could do a whole unit on it, with, the house that Mac built, or, or even the napping house.
Yeah.
So because you can incorporate all different things in there. So yeah, kind of a fun one, I thought.
Well, speaking of fun,
Mhm.
my next one is pretty fun. This is No Pants.
Yes.
Got to get the glare off this book. So of course, this is the endless childhood battle of trying to get your clothes on and little kids not wanting to wear their clothes. So we wake up in the morning and it's a father and son, and the little boy's name is Pablo. And it's a very special day today because today's the day of the family cookout. And so they're doing their morning routine. Like first they have to have breakfast, and the little boy wants pancakes. No, we're just having oatmeal. And then you've got to put your bowl in the sink and brush your teeth and use the potty and wash your hands. And I love this. And now it's just time to get dressed. And I just love his body language and the way this illustration.
How I look at my closet sometimes in the morning, right?
I know. It's like, oh, again. So I love the physical comedy of the illustrations in this book. And the father, of course, is just like, everybody wears pants. You have to wear your pants. And he's like, I don't have to wear pants to party. And the dad's like, yeah, you do. And so they talk about everybody that wears pants, and they talk about the special kinds of pants there are. There's pants for doing sports. There's ski pants. There's pants you wear when you go to the symphony. And the little boy brings up that grandpa doesn't wear pants. Like there he is in his little yellow Speedo. It could be argued those are kind of pants, but the father goes on to say that firefighters have pants, there's yoga pants, there's sweat pants, surgeons wear special pants called scrubs. So it's just really fun. And I'm not going to give away the ending, but I think to small children, like anytime you hear the word pants in a story, it's just kind of intrinsically funny. But it's also relatable because there's, I remember when I was a kid, like there were certain pairs of pants I hated because it was the 70s and they were polyester and like super scratchy. And, kids are just sensitive to those things.
Yeah.
So I just thought this was great fun. I thought it would be perfect for a story time. Mel, what did you think?
Yeah, I thought it would be a really fun one for story time. I think his frustration on not getting what he wants and what does he have control over? It's getting dressed, right? So, and then he settles on the no pants, which just so funny to me. But it's realistic because his frustration comes through, the dad's frustration comes through. And I just found that hilarious because as a parent, you just know what that frustration feels like.
Yeah.
And I love the ending on how they get to the party and then what the result is. So I just thought that was great. But I thought different activities you could do with this is like you could have kids design their own pants. If they could have a favorite pair of pants, they could design their own pants. So you have a chance to put in that artwork, and that, art has all those cognitive skills around it where you're making decisions and problem solving, how you're designing your pants, and, so I thought that would be a really fun activity. The other thing you can do is talking about getting dressed every day and dressing appropriately for the weather or for where you're going. So I think that is another fun thing that you could do because it's something that the kids can relate to. And, even older kids sometimes, they're just like, I don't care what the weather is outside. This is what I want to wear. It's
you see that all the
100 degrees
time.
out, but I'm still going to wear my snow boots, or
my favorite hoodie.
Yeah, or it's 10 degrees outside and the little girl still wants to wear her dress, with no tights and flip-flops. So, I mean, you can relate to all of those, and just you can start talking about the seasons and dressing appropriately for the weather. But it had a lot of humor in it, and I love books with humor in it. So I think it had something for the adults who are reading it as well as for the kids.
I thought it also modeled a great father-son relationship. Like,
yes,
it's always great to see that in picture books, to see, the dad kind of taking on what might, 40 years ago have been considered like the mom role, like the breakfast and getting the kid dressed.
Yeah.
Just really fun, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that a lot about it too. Cause for my kiddos, my husband was the one who was at home, during the day. So, he did a lot of that stuff. So I think it's great to be able to see that. And then for the kids to identify with that too. Oh yeah, my dad says that too. Or, oh yeah, my mom says that too. So I think it's a very relatable book in general. So yeah.
I really like the color scheme. It's nice and bright.
Yeah, nice and bright. We were talking about earlier about not being able to see it. I also love where these are just nice bright colors in the contrast, and there he is trying to put pants on the dog. So
oh yeah, I forgot to talk about that whole section of the book where it's like, now that we figured out what pants we're going to wear, how do we wear them? And it shows like, he's trying to put them on the dog, he's wearing them on his head as a hat, and there's also the right and wrong way to wear pants.
So that was just I think they managed to put a lot of stuff in there, and it's great for discussion points with kids. Is that how we wear our pants? No. But then just making it a fun story too. So kudos to Jacob Grant.
Yes. We'll keep our eyes on him.
Yes,
I think this might have been a first book, I'm not sure. But my last one, I'm really excited to talk about this one. and it's a COVID-19 book, and it's really interesting to see these coming out kind of at the tail end of things.
Mhm,
And I'm just going to be really interested in seeing what the sales are for
mhm.
something like this, you know, or the checkouts. And I'm noticing some of the other ones that we have in the collection are checking out. But this one is Keeping the City Going by Brian Floca. And this immediately jumped out at me because Brian Floca did Locomotive, which won the 2014 Caldecott, which is the award, of course, given for illustration. And so his work is just really beautiful and detailed. Um, so this takes place in New York, and it starts out like it's a New York City like we've never seen before. And because the streets are still, everybody's leaning out of their windows. And I think even for, you know, kids in this area that might be more suburban or rural,
Mhm.
you know, chances are, you know, even the busier parts of like say Spokane Valley, you know, there was a time where like there were hardly any cars on the road. And,
Yeah.
you know, I've seen people post pictures of downtown Spokane with, um, you know, nobody, no cars, no
Mhm.
people in the crosswalks. And so this book is, you know, dedicated to all the essential workers. And so we've got like our food delivery people, we've got all the different vehicle drivers. And I love that, like Brian Floca's fascination with vehicles really comes through here. And so I think kids that are vehicle obsessed will find a lot to love just identifying the different
Definitely.
kinds of cars that you see. So, and I also love like these were sketches that he was just doing to pass the time in the early days of the pandemic. And he started this as a YouTube video, like just something to kind of entertain kids stuck at home. And he talked to his editor at his longtime publisher, and they were like, this could be a really great book. So some of the people you're seeing here, like this is his actual male person that he got permission to do an illustration of. So I
Mhm.
just love that these are just his sketches of everyday life. And so we're talking about the fire trucks and the police cars. Um, you know, and then there's a whole section about kind of that. I don't know if it happened in Spokane, but I know it happened in cities around the United States. And I know they were doing it in Seattle, where at 7 o'clock, everybody would open their windows and applaud and, you know, bang pots and pans as a way to kind of let the essential workers know, you know, we appreciate you, we see you, you know, we're stuck in our houses, but you're awesome. So I really love that. And I think, you know, that could be even a fun thing to do as an activity, like, you know, how much noise can you make with
Mm.
all
Yeah,
this stuff?
definitely.
So it's just really beautifully done. It's kind of a slice of life of what the living through the pandemic was like, especially in a big city. And if I were going to do something with this book, I would pair it with Llewellyn. I always say her name wrong. Luann Pham did a book called Outside Inside,
Mhm.
which is kind of the perspective of, you know, being stuck in your house
Mhm.
and, you know, wanting to be outside, wanting to go to all the places that you used to get to go, but not being able to.
Mhm.
And that one's a much more kind of homebound book, but I think that they offer really interesting perspectives on what we've all just been through. Mel, what did you think of this one?
Yeah, I really liked it. I thought it would be great for older kids. I mean, older
Mhm.
preschool and early elementary. I like that they pointed out the people that kept, everyone going during the pandemic. They even talked about the whole toilet paper issue.
Yes, I thought that was great.
Yeah, I thought that was great. I thought it was a very nice thank you and a tribute to the
Mhm.
people that kept us going. And I really liked his note at the end of the book. He did a little author's note that was a couple paragraphs long at the
Oh
end,
yeah.
which I really thought was really nice as he talked about, what's inspired him to create this. You can look at this, you can look back at this and use this kind of as you know, I don't know what the right word is, because keepsake and memento usually have a positive connotation to them.
Yeah.
But just as a way to, kind of remember. I know one of our early learning librarians was looking for a book for each of her kids that they
Mhm.
could keep that would talk about what was going on during the time.
Oh, that's
So,
cool.
so I thought from that perspective, it was really interesting too, that having a book that kind of talks about it so that the kids don't forget. And I mean, I'm sure there's certain
Mhm.
things they'll always remember about that. during it. I think the thank you part of it was really touched my heart
Yeah.
during that. And I thought a great activity would be, for your kids that are just starting to write out sentences, who would you thank? And they could do thank you letters, or even for the younger kids, just thank you pictures. Who were you thankful for during that time? And to see, and it may not, and then it doesn't even have to be essential workers. Maybe it was a Zoom call with grandma or grandpa or aunt and uncle,
Yeah.
or, maybe they were happy that they had their grandparent living with them during that time. So they had somebody else to talk to. So, yeah, it just kind of caught my attention. And so I thought that, oh yeah, I wouldn't have thought to write a book about the pandemic and what people were going through. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see if we get to see that through different countries even.
Oh yeah,
I
that's a
think
good point.
that would be interesting to see and point out what was the same and what was different.
Right. Yeah, and in some countries it's still very much a reality, like there are some countries that are still really struggling with it. And then there were others that, like before it even really took off here, it was just going like wildfire. I'm thinking of like Italy right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. And it'll be interesting to see if these resonate with people. Like I love the idea of our one of our early learning team librarians, wanting to have something to remember this by for her kids, like a keepsake sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or I guess maybe a document of this
A
time.
document of it. That
Yeah.
I would have put it. So, yeah, it'll be just interesting to see what the publishing world does with, if we'll see more this, or maybe just the few is all that we need. And because we know that children's books go out of print so quickly, that's why we always recommend, if you really like something, either for your own kids or for a classroom activity, that you buy the book, because we don't know how long we're able to keep them, because our books get such high use that eventually they end up falling apart, and then we realize we can't replace them. So because children's books go to print so quickly, so it'll be interesting to see from that perspective what happens too.
Definitely.
Yeah. The other thing I always like to look at in all the books was the end papers, but I think all the end papers in these books were they were all pretty plain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't always happen.
Yeah, no. So, yeah, just kind of interesting. So yeah, thank you for picking out this set of books.
Oh, you're welcome.
They were really fun to talk about. So yeah, and we had some things in this set that, we were just wondering about. A lot of times we're like, oh yes, all of these books.
Yeah.
Great. So
yeah, and I love how, in talking about them, like this always happens when we do this, I'll see a book a completely different way based on something that you noticed about it. So it's really fun to kind of dissect these as, like teaching tools and works of art, and just all the different decisions they go into making picture books.
And that's great questions to ask either your child or the kids in your care too. What do you like about this book? Because suddenly you see it even from a child's perspective, because there are lots of books out there that we might look at and go, no. And then all of a sudden you realize, all the kids you're reading it to are loving it, and you're like, okay, I missed something here. Or one that we really liked, and the kids are just kind of okay. So I think that's always a fun conversation. What a great way to enrich vocabulary and literacy skills by talking about what you're reading and what you're looking at. Just like what we like to do.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Sheri, and thank you all for joining us today. And we hope you enjoyed this episode of Picture Book Chat. And we'll see you again next month. Bye.
Bye.